Okay, since we've looked at simple interest, let's move on and look at compound interest. With compound interest, the main difference is that the interest is paid back into the account. So we start with our principal, and from that we calculate our interest in the usual way. So it's the interest rate times the principal. The difference here though is instead of just paying that interest out, that then gets added back into the principal at the beginning of the next interest bearing cycle. So what we have here is the principal plus the interest from the first cycle. So what we actually have here is a new principal, which is the old principal plus the interest rate times the principal. And from that we then calculate interest again in the same way. So that becomes the interest rate times principal plus interest rate times principal. And that then is paid back into the principal again. So what we end up with is principal plus the interest rate times the principal plus the interest rate times the principal. Fortunately, this rather complicated calculation can actually be written much more simply as the amount of the investment is equal to the principal times 1 plus the interest rate to the power n, where n is the number of interest cycles that we've gone through. So this is actually written in much more simple terms like that. And that's the formula that we use for compound interest. Okay, so let's look at a practical example. Here we are looking at an investment of $1,000 invested at 5% of interest per year compounding. So these are our investment cycles: 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and our initial investment is for $1,000 and our interest rate is 5%. Now the interest we work out there is going to be 0.05 times 1,000, which is $50. And that actually then gets added in to my amount invested for the second investment cycle. So this now becomes $1,050. Invested again for another year at 5% interest, which means that the interest which I'm going to have at the end of my second year is $52.50. So it's actually $2.50 more than the previous year. And that then gets added back into my amount invested for the third year, which makes that now $1,102.50. Again, invested at 5% gives me interest of $55.13, which then gets added back into my investment, which gives, for the fourth year, which gives me a total investment of $1,157.63. Again, invested at 5%, which gives me an interest at the end of the fourth year of $57.88. So at the end of my 4 years, instead of the $200 that I would have earned at simple interest, I actually have $215.51 in interest. Working that out according to our little formula, if we wanted to just use the formula instead of using this table, the amount of my investment is equal to the principal times 1 plus the interest per interest-bearing term to n, which is the number of interest-bearing terms. That, in this case, equals $1,000 times 1 plus 0.05 or 500ths to the 4th power, because we've got 4 cycles. And that then gives me $1,215.89. Sorry, 51 cents, my mistake. Which is my final amount, which is the $1,000 that I started with plus $215.51 interest. So that's how compound interest works.